you have made a huge effort to join us today from different parts of the world. On behalf of us all, we are deeply appreciative and offer you our most grateful welcome. We would like to commence this session by starting with a very auspicious ceremony of holy lamp lighting. Before we get started on this occasion, I would like to invite our principal ma'am, Professor Atima Sharma Dwivedi, an alumna of Harvard Graduate School of Education, USA, a dynamic academician who has served for the past 12 years in KMB, and under her leadership, the institution has touched unprecedented heights. To please share some few words, ma'am.
Thank you, Sonam, very much for a very energetic start to this conclave, the second day of this wonderful conclave. At the outset, I want to extend a very warm welcome to today's brilliant speakers and our very, very dear friends, Dr. Marta Fulop and Dr. Janusz Győri from the University of Eötvös Laurent in Hungary. Both these speakers are eminent scholars in this #1 university of the country. I have personally witnessed and seen what academic standards this university has, understanding these two scholars and researchers and the place they have made for themselves in the national and international academic scenario. Well, we also have another dynamic professor, Professor Edward Downes, with us today. His presence is always so assuring, a great friend, and always so supportive. So Dr. Downes from Boston University, US, Department of Communications, is welcome too, and he's a part of this conclave, and he'll be addressing at a later day. Dr. Marta and Dr. Győri, I think on your behalf, since you are the central figures and the speakers, I also welcome, well, we also have John Battaglino of Boston University, Dean, Student Welfare. So thank you so much, John, for joining us here. And after yesterday's very fruitful address by the two brilliant speakers of Boston University, Dr. Maria and Dr. Malvika, we have had overwhelming response from all over the globe. Indian universities from across the states, various states of India, and also countries abroad. And so we are on to a very, very brilliant start of this conclave. It just proves that we are one family over the globe. We as humanity share common threads. At present in particular, we share, since we are all human beings, so we are a huge, big global village, proves more than ever in the present situation. And so I think this is like a very valid thing to come together, and this is the need of the hour, and listen to each other about the new models of teaching. Because as we talked yesterday, that education is one of the worst areas which has suffered due to the COVID pandemic. The students, the educators, and the whole society realizes the fact that we have to remodel, recreate, rethink the teaching learning processes. And today's the people, the two brilliant professors we have with us.
Ma'am is not audible. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am, please continue.
Okay. So I was sorry for this technical, hitch. So I was just saying that I have heard Dr. Mata and Dr. Janusz, their research in KMB when they addressed the international conferences. And I must say that today, all the people who have joined us, while I welcome every participant, the students in this today's dialogue, I want to tell everyone that their research is so valuable because mental health is important more than ever today. We have to address the psychological aspect of the students and the educators more than ever in this present situation. So without saying anything more, I would not stand between the brilliant speakers and all of you. And having just given you this small introduction of the subject and how relevant it is, and the research which the valuable research done by these two brilliant scholars, I would now invite the rest of the proceeding, and I hope that they will now start their presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your warm welcome. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our first speaker. Today, I have the honor of introducing you to Professor Dr. Marta Philipp, who is an extraordinary scientific advisor and head of the Social and Cultural Psychology Research Group in the Institute of Cognitive Neuroscience and Psychology, Research Centers of Natural Sciences, and Professor of Social Psychology of Autonomouswomencollege University, Hungary. She is the Secretary General of the International Association for Cross-Cultural Psychology and the President-elect of the Children's Identity and Citizenship European Association. She is widely acknowledged and recipient of innumerable awards and honors, including Scientific Award of Excellence in Research and many more. Her passionate dedication is an important component of empowerment, and it's inspiring. It is an honor to have Dr. Marta in our midst today. Inviting Dr. Marta to express her views on the topic, the effect of the COVID-19 lockdown on Hungarian university students' mental health. On to Dr. Marta.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much for the possibility to talk about this very recent research, because we did this research exactly during the lockdown. But before I start to go into the details of the research, I would like to put you into a little bit to the Hungarian context of this pandemic, so you will be able to embed what you learn about the university students' fears and learnings in relation to this context. So please start the presentation, and I am going to present first a little bit about Hungary. Yes, can go to the next slide, please. Yes, so just to put you into perspective, because compared to India and the United States as well, Hungary is a very, very tiny country. the population is less than 10 million, 9,650,000 people live in Hungary. So it's a really, really small country. And we started to have the very first cases of COVID-19 at the very beginning of March. But if you go to the next slide, I am going to explain more data about the pandemic. So the very first cases were detected at the beginning of March, but already March 11, the lockdown started. In fact, at that point, there were very few infections in Hungary. And if you look at the slide, you can see that altogether there are very few infected people, only 4,731 at the moment today. And 605 people died. And also the active cases are around the same number. So compared to hundreds of thousands or more than 5 million infected people, for instance, in the United States, this is a very small number of people. However, when in March, the first cases started in Hungary, the population and the government was also in a kind of extreme caution, because we saw pictures from China and then especially from a much closer place in Europe, from Italy. And we saw that the Italians could really hardly cope with the number of infected people, and the hospitals couldn't take the infected people. They didn't have enough engines to treat the infected people. So that kind of chaos and frightening, impossible healthcare situation really warned the Hungarian government to put the lockdown at a very early stage. So the lockdown lasted approximately to the middle of May. And on March 11, the university students got the instruction to leave their dormitories. They had to move out from the university dormitories and they had to move back home. So everybody had to go home. And from that moment on, in fact, university students were not allowed to enter university buildings, university premises at all. And that was the case with the teachers. In case of the teachers and staff members, it was something really inevitable, or there were researchers whose research went on in laboratories and they had to, let's say, stop it, or they had to oversee it, then they were allowed to enter, but only with special permissions. So this was basically the case when I collected the data from the university students. Please go to the next slide. So the data collection was between April 16 and May 23, but the majority of data were collected between April 16 and April 20. So basically 1 month after the lockdown started. And at that very point, now we know, of course, at that point we didn't know. Now we know that so far the highest number of new daily cases were exactly during this period, and the highest number of deaths, daily deaths, was in this period. After that, around May, the numbers started to decrease. But of course, at this very point, nobody knew if we are going to reach, let's say, the situation what was the case in Italy or not. Please go to the next slide. So the respondents were university students from different universities in Budapest, and their mean age was 22 years approximately. And we had 369 respondents. And what we wanted to see, emotional coping with this situation, and their mental health situation, and also how they perceive this particular situation they suddenly fell into. So please go to the next slide. We, of course, asked about their COVID-19 situation, and you can see what later on the numbers, of course, proved that 96%, almost 97% of the respondents had absolutely no symptoms, and only one positive COVID test out of 369. Symptoms mean that they had the symptoms what were described as COVID-19 symptoms, but they didn't get the test. They were not tested, so it was not approved that they are really sick. So it can happen that they were, or it can also happen that they were not. And you can see that also in the family, very few members were in fact infected among those who answered this questionnaire. Of course, this is not a representative study, but generally speaking, you see the whole population numbers, that's also low. But at this moment, I have to emphasize nobody knew what is going to happen later on. Okay, so let's go further on. So I don't go into the closed-ended questions, but I think it will be very interesting for the students. And in a way, I hope that when you listen to these answers, what I will explain, what were the questions, you may find many similarities, what you were afraid of, what you thought you learned from this situation, or what you decided that you can do to get out of this situation in a positive way, may have very many similarities, and maybe you will discover some differences, what Hungarian students fear, learn, do, and that was not in your mind or not necessarily was in the focus of your attention. So we put 3 open-ended questions after the closed-ended questions, and the first question was, what is my biggest fear in this situation caused by COVID-19? Then the second question was, what can I learn from this situation caused by COVID-19? And the third one was, what can I do in order to have also positive results in my life of the situation caused by COVID-19? And now I will present you, of course, in a categorized way, the different kinds of answers. And you will also see that the whole conference is mainly about education and how education had to change as a result of this pandemic. But you will see that where education or studies come into the picture when there are these general questions put, you see. So, education is in the focus of this Congress, but of course, students have a global psychological realm, and education is part of it. And you will see how it comes into the picture when we didn't put any direct question about education. Still, you will see it comes into the picture and it plays a role. So let's go to the fears. Yes, you can go to the next one. So what were the biggest fears among the students? And you can see that one leading fear was related to economic consequences. Many students in Hungary not only study, but they have part-time jobs which support their studies and support them financially. So they were afraid that they lose their part-time job. They were afraid that their family members lose their job. They were afraid that they themselves or the family lose their savings. They were very much afraid not only about their own economic situation or their family's economic situation, but the whole world or the country and the whole world. So they were afraid of economic crisis to come, collapsed economies in the country and all around the world. And also they were afraid of their future in relation to economy, that by the time they graduate, there will be no jobs, there will be unemployment. And even if they have their particular expertise, they will not be able to get into the job market because there will be no jobs. Of course, the second biggest fear was the health consequences. They were afraid that they will get sick or they will die. Some explicitly wrote this. Or their family members get sick, especially grandparents, older people, because in Hungary, it's really the case that mostly those who are above 60 got seriously sick. I mean, now there are more and more young people who are infected, but they don't have, fortunately, those kind of serious symptoms as the older people. So they were very much afraid for older members of the family, especially grandparents. It's very interesting because not only they were afraid of themselves getting sick or their family members getting sick, but making others sick, that they are the ones who bring the virus to somebody and then that person gets sick. So they felt a huge responsibility to try to avoid not to give the virus to anybody else if they, for instance, being unaware of it, just accidentally brings it to somebody else. Of course, the possibility at this point in April was not very big that they can do this because everybody was at home and in lockdown. And they were also afraid of further health consequences that, okay, I survive or I recover, but there may be long-term health consequences of getting the virus. Now you will see that the third one is studies, and it came into the picture. For instance, they were afraid that they are unable to achieve well among these circumstances. They won't be able to pass their exams. Some of them were before graduation, that they will be unable to graduate. They were afraid that this goes on, and not only in the spring term, but also in the fall term, they will have no face-to-face classes and online teaching will go on. They were afraid that the quality of their studies drops, so they will not be able to learn as well as they would if the university functions in the normal mode or way. Several of the Hungarian students go to study abroad. They go to different countries in the European Union for part-time studies, or some want to continue, for instance, after the bachelor level at the master level in different foreign countries. So they were very much afraid that it will be impossible to do. And for instance, even if they have a scholarship, they are losing it because they will not be able to use it. Also, they were afraid that they are unable to cope with the remote or online studying. So that's not something that they can do well, or they will learn, they will be skillful enough to use, and so on and so on. And also they were afraid that they will not be allowed to enter the university even in the fall semester. So they really, interestingly enough, sometimes when university life is on, studies are not necessarily the focus of the attention of the students, but this time they were really afraid that they cannot continue their studies in the normal way, and they wanted to have that. Also, they feared, they had many fears about social relationships, that they are losing their friends because they cannot meet, they cannot spend time together. Some Hungarian university students have their romantic partners, and of course the romantic partners were with their families, they were with their own families, so they are unable to meet their loving partner. They miss their old grandparents and old family members whom they couldn't meet, and they were afraid that for a long time they will not be able to see them. Some wanted to get married, and they were very much afraid that their wedding will be postponed, and also being isolated for a long time. Let's go to the next one. And big concern was unpredictability and uncertainty, that nobody knows what will happen, nobody knows what to expect. There are many different kinds of maybe possible millions of news about different kinds of potential vaccines, potential medicines, but all is potential, all is just possible, nothing is sure. So that kind of unpredictability was also difficult. And that this is going to be long lasting, that nobody sees the end, nobody knows how long this lasts. when things get back to normal, when can they get back their normal life, and if they can get back their normal life. Thank you. Also political consequences that, for instance, due to the situation, there were these emergency governing. So they were afraid that democracy is threatened by this, that the situation can be used to make decisions and legislations that should be discussed in a democratic way, and instead of that, it can get approved without any kind of democratic debate. Cultural consequences, that theaters close, there are no concerts, museums close. In Hungary, there are many big pop festivals during the summer and big summer concerts, and all those festivals are going to be postponed. These are very popular among young people, so many of them attended. Also, their travel plans, that they are unable to travel for tourism, for instance, sports, that many of them do competitive sports, and of course those activities were also stopped. So when are they able to continue? How can they keep fit? And all the sports competitions were canceled. And also mental health and character problems, for instance, that they become lazy at home because they don't have that structured activities, that due to the isolation, their mental health is going to suffer, or generally around them, the Hungarian citizens, the people will be desperate. So the mental health condition of the general population will worsen. So that was also a kind of concern. Please go to the next one. And it was very interesting. Very few such answers were there, but there were some students who said, I don't have any fears. I am not afraid of anything. I am okay, and no problem with this situation. So that was also an answer that we found. And now we can go to what did they learn? And this is now already the positive side. And to tell you honestly, I was positively surprised by the answers, that the students really gave meaningful answers and really showed that they try to cope with the situation in a very positive and adequate way. So what do I learn? For instance, social understanding. They said that this is a unique historical situation. For many decades, there was nothing similar like this. And it's very interesting how the world, how the country, how the people behave in such a situation, how the societies cope with this situation. So a kind of social observation, social learning. This was one thing they told. And the next one, please. And the biggest category was how their mental health and their character develops as a result of this situation. For instance, they said that they learn to adapt to unpredictability, to accept that the world is unpredictable and not everything can be controlled. And this is very important, because it seemed that these young people had the notion that basically they are in control of their life, more or less, or they can predict what will happen. And now they suddenly face a situation where they can see that nobody knows. Nobody knows, even the experts don't know. And so in order to cope with this, you have to just accept that that's unpredictable. I can't take control of it. Now, the next one was self-knowledge, learning about themselves, that they learn to know themselves better. They are able to pay attention to their own feelings, to their own thoughts, to their own interests. They slow down, they are more connected to their inner processes, because they cannot do so many things outside. So this helps them to being more preoccupied with themselves and find out who they really are. And also self-acceptance, that not only learn about themselves, but accept themselves as they are or who they are. Also, they said they learned to control their financial worries, that they had financial worries before the pandemic, but now the situation seemed them to be even less predictable or controllable. So their worries have to be controlled, not their finances, let's put it that way. That they learned that they cannot build on only one thing. They have to be flexible. They have to be multifaceted. Please go back to the previous slide just for a second. Multifaceted and not to build on only one path, not to depend on one thing. They have to be they learn to be self-reliant. They learn to be endurant, resilient, not to give up. They learned coping with difficult situations. They learned reframing and find the good in the bad. They learned patience. Now that's also very interesting because young people in Hungary, they are not known about their patience. You see, they want everything fast and right now and here and now. And this is very interesting that many of them, they said they learned to be patient and also to value what was considered taken for granted for themselves before. Now they value that they had it because they lost quite a number of things. For instance, just the possibility to go out to the street and take a walk, which normally you don't consider something extra or something especially rewarding. Suddenly all these everyday mini life experiences became valuable, and they learned that they should treasure all those everyday activities as well. Also, they learn to distinguish, they say, what cannot be changed and what can be changed. So make a difference and concentrate on what can be changed and not, let's say, tying their energy to things that cannot be changed, and also distinguish what is important and what is not in life. So as you can see that if we put all these together, generally I can say, at least that's my impression, I am not sure you share this impression, that somehow this situation tended to mature these young people and provided them with a lot of potential learning experience. Now let's go to the next slide, please. Yes, studies. They said they can allocate more time to study, so they can concentrate more on studies. And they also said that, in fact, they realized that it's possible to learn or study online, and it's possible to do studies in a remote way. And they seem to be appreciating that they learned how to do it. So they were afraid that they are not able to learn it. You remember this was among the fears. But at the same time, they emphasize that they are learning how to do it. And it's good that they experience that they are able to do it. And there is a way to learn this way as well, not only face-to-face. They also learn time management, how to use the more time efficiently, planning and structuring their day, establish daily routine, and finding new activities they had no time to pursue before. Also, some of them, I mentioned you that some students have their part-time job. Some of them started home office at home, working from home, and they also realized that it's also possible that you can work from home. And they discovered new hobbies, for instance, gardening. Normally, Hungarian university students are not very much interested in gardening. That's more like the grandparents' hobby. But this time they also, if they had a garden, they also started to do gardening and such kind of activities, but they were not interested before. Yes, next one, please. And social relationships, who is really important and who is important as a friend and who is not. they realized that there is a need, much more need to help each other and cooperation. Now here I have to emphasize that generally the Hungarian young people are very individualistic and very much concentrating on their own welfare and helping each other and cooperation. Of course it happens, but it is not a main value. Now it seemed that in this situation they realized that this is also important. I mean, people are dependent on each other. You cannot just be independent and totally autonomous, but you have to take others into consideration and also help them and cooperate with them. And physical closeness is irreplaceable. Quite a number of students wrote that, okay, virtual world is good and all the different kinds of technical Facebook and social media, everything is very good, but in fact they cannot replace meeting people face to face and being able to touch them, being able to be in their physical closeness. And it's interesting, they said they realized that it's important to wash hands. That's very interesting because, of course, each Hungarian parent, and also in the kindergarten and in the school, everybody teaches children to wash hands before you eat, wash hands when you get home. So it's important, but many times Hungarian young people just don't care, you see. And now it seems that they appreciate that they learn that it's important to wash hands, and they wash hands, and it's important to protect themselves against viruses. So that's the learn. And then, of course, there were some who said, I didn't learn anything, nothing. And so I am not afraid of anything. I didn't learn anything. But this was a very, very tiny proportion of the respondents. And then what to do? You can go to the next one, please. Next slide. Yes. And here it's very interesting because here study was a big majority of the answers. And very interesting, do the best in the university studies, have great exams, so high achievement motivation, learn new things which can be useful after COVID-19 period, for instance, foreign languages, study as much as possible, using the extra time to study more. It was very surprising to me to read all these answers. Learn new useful activities, for instance, how to cook, read many books. So this kind of intellectual improvement or in doing things that intellectually develop them or grow them, that was very important. And also this ambition to do well in the university and do their studies well. And a different kind of learning, what they also emphasize to do, that they want to improve themselves as a character, as a person, and learn from the situation as much as possible and draw conclusions. And next, please. They also said they do what they do. They structure their tasks, they structure their plans, they structure their environment. For instance, they tidy up, they put things in order in their rooms. So normally young people in Hungary, in their rooms, they have a big kind of mess. So now they put their things into order, and also mental and psychological ordering. So putting themselves into order. And another one is to enjoy and concentrate on positive things, enjoy myself, rest. And this is also interesting. Teach and help others to find what is enjoyable in this situation. So here again, it's interesting to me as a Hungarian, because this again is a concern towards others or a responsibility towards others, which normally is not a characteristic feature of the young Hungarians. We can go further on, please. Family, help the family and spend more time with the family. And in terms of social relationships, to nurture friendships, and again comes help others. And finally, go ahead and not to stop and survive the situation. So what to do to survive? And my final words are related to the mental health services for students. So each university set up, many universities already had, but many also newly set up online counseling for university students. There were many, of course, on website available leaflets listing the most common problems and advice. The Hungarian Psychological Association also provided many guidelines, and many therapists offered free counseling and limited number of free counseling time for anybody, including, of course, students. And there were free telephone helplines also set up. So of course, in this particular situation, only the online means were available, but universities felt responsible for their students and give advice to all those, or counseling to all those who felt the need. But I want to emphasize that this is, of course, not a representative study. Also, I can imagine that if a student was not in a good psychological condition, maybe didn't feel the motivation to fill in such a questionnaire. So we don't know what others would say about these questions, but based on these questions, and also in fact the quantitative results, which were depression scale and loneliness scale and all these different kinds of emotional coping and mental health questionnaires, they don't show alarming results. I mean, generally speaking, to tell you honestly, mostly surprisingly, it seems that the students cope with this situation quite well. So this is what I wanted to say, and I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much for your attention, really.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mata, for sharing your views on mental health and your experience. And we will take up the questions after Dr. Jonas talk collectively. Is it okay with you, ma'am?
Yes, of course, yes. So if you think it's better to do that, yes. Then I invite János to come here and give his talk, because he was sitting in the other part of the room. So he's coming in a minute, and I give my seat to him.
Thank you, Marta. That was brilliant. And I think we share these experiences and many of the things, as I said, that we are all one big human family. And thank you so much for these insights into the minds of the educators as well as the students. And I'm sure this is we are relating a lot with all that you have exposed, you have shared with us through your research. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, moving forward, it's my privilege and honor to introduce our second speaker, Professor Dr. János Góri from Autonomouswomencollege Laurean University, Hungary. Dr. János is a professor of education at Autonomouswomencollege Laurean University, Faculty of Education and Psychology Institute for Intercultural Psychology and Education. His main interest is diversity and integration in education from cultural and social aspects. Dr. János also served as the president of the Hungarian Reading Association, a highly erudite personality, and as the only expert of Asian and South Asian education in Hungary. He has widely published books, chapters, and articles on different educational issues. Inviting Dr. János to express his views on the topic, systematic, institutional, and individual responses to COVID situation in Hungarian public and higher education. On to you, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this beautiful introduction. And I agree with Professor Atima Sharma that we belong to a big family all over the globe, but actually Marta and we belong to the same small family in Hungary. And this is actually a very good situation professionally, that we can cooperate very well, because our knowledge systems are very close to each other. However, still we work for different fields, because as you introduced Marta, and as you understood from her presentation, she is a psychologist, and I myself, I work for the Faculty of Education and Psychology and Intercultural Psychology and Education Institution, but I am dealing with education. I am not a psychologist. So at the end of my presentation, I can concentrate on the educational questions to give answers to them, and Marta can give to the psychological answers. Thank you for the stage, and I start my presentation. Can you share the screen? Could you finally technically solve? Could you all open my presentation?
When we start
please.
the screen.
Yes, and we can put it on whole screen mode. Thank you very much. And we can go to the next slide. On this next slide, on this green slide, I try to concentrate on some very basic issues, because what is interesting and important from educational aspect that the situation all over the globe, all over the world became very, very similar. It was a universal impact, but we had only one reason of this, and that was the virus, this new type of virus. So we can go back to the virus as the starting point of this whole situation, but the starting point had an impact on the whole globe. As you will see later, approximately 2 billion students all over the world. However, we cannot say that this one reason had only one universal impact in education, because in many, many respects, as you will see later, it had very, very different consequences. And therefore, maybe my main point is, with the smaller letter at the bottom of the slide, that we can't hope to find out one solution for this situation, because the consequences of this one reason, the virus situation, are very, very different from very different aspects. I will show you later some of these respects. So we can't hope that we can find one very good solution for this. And the next one, before I start the presentation, is that this is a real challenge, a challenge which threatens us, but also brings opportunities for us. And despite the fact that in the bigger part of my presentation, I will concentrate on the problems and on some possible solutions, I hope that in the future we will find much more solutions, and it brings opportunities with itself as well. Because when we have a catastrophic situation, and we can say this is a catastrophic situation, then human creativity becomes stronger, and innovation is so much needed under this pressure that we can hope that we will find innovative solutions also in the future. I'm not brave enough to tell you that we already found really highly influential, innovative solutions for the situation. So this slide, what you see on the screen, I just repeat my main axiom that we can't expect to find a single uniform answer to this situation, even not within a single educational system. So not globally, but also in a country. We can't expect to find out one solution for the situation. Unfortunately, there is no royal road to solve this situation, because there are several components and variations of this situation. Again, I will tell you later about these components and variations on my coming slides. And therefore, we can't hope that we will find one solution. Education was one of the sectors in every society which was and which is infected by the COVID situations very, very deeply. I would say you that education was constantly developing in the past 100-200 years. of the history. And I think this was the biggest break in this constant development, in this constant global development of education. And in this sense, this is really an unexpected getting down. And this is an unexpected situation because this constant development just break in an unexpected way and speed. Nobody expected anything happen in education like this previously. So therefore, I think I don't have data. I am not sure that we can have data for this statement, but I think that this is the biggest loss forever in the continuous development of education and knowledge creation in human history, because education is not important in itself as an activity, but education is a tool of knowledge creation of humanship. However, as I mentioned again at the bottom of my slides, you see these information are typically on the bottom on my slides. In this catastrophic situation, we have an opportunity to learn, to innovate, and maybe to redesign some aspects and some elements of education or education in general. Okay, now we can go to the next slide, because from that slide, I can start to show you how many aspects and levels of education were infected by the COVID virus. I can't show you and I can't tell you all the levels and all the aspects of education which were infected by this situation, but some of them I name and I list on these coming slides. So the virus infected, sorry, just a minute. The virus infected education, different scales of education. Global education was infected by the virus immediately and very quickly. I couldn't tell you any similar previously in the history. So this is really, really a very unique situation that you in India, we in the middle of Europe, they in North and South America, all the others in Africa and Australia, New Zealand, we are all in the very same situation, which arrived very quickly and very unexpectedly. And this means that education is infected globally because we have so many millions international students already all around the world, more than 10 million international students. And all these international students, not just the national students, I mean, students who go to their national education are infected. These international students are infected very much, and internationalization of education, mostly higher education, was really, really strictly impacted by this unexpected situation. Also, the national systems found themselves in a challenging situation because they had to give an answer on a national scale to this situation. And we can say that some national educational systems were more prepared than some others. We will see how Hungarian national system of education reacted to COVID situation. Also this, sorry, I think we have to go back to the previous, yes, thank you very much. Also, what I will talk about that the educational institutions, schools and higher education institutions were also very, very much infected by this COVID situation. Now I am talking about formal mainstream education, but also, as you will see, non-formal and private education was very much infected by COVID situation. But in many senses, that segment of education was positively infected by COVID situation, but the national institutions, public schools and public higher education institutions, they were badly infected by the situations. And also all the individuals who are involved and interested, and most of the society members are involved for any reason in education, we were infected, the students, the parents, the teachers, the school leaders, educational policymakers, all of us individually found ourselves in challenging situation. Another aspect is the next part of my slide, different levels and age cohorts of education. Because preschool children, I mean young children between 3 and 6 years of age, their education was very, very strongly infected by COVID situation, and because the nursery schools and kindergartens also had to be closed, and they found themselves out of their previous community. I mean these young children. Also, elementary school children, mostly those who went to the first grade in education, they were strongly infected by this situation because they could spend only 1 to 3 months, depending on the calendar of the academic year in an educational system. They could spend only 1 to 3 months in education, I mean formal education. They started to become socialized for formal education, and it was interrupted immediately. Also, lower and higher secondary education was infected, and naturally, as I mentioned to you, higher education was impacted by this situation. And naturally, also postgraduate education, mostly PhD education, was impacted by this situation. Okay, now we can go to the next slide. Thank you very much. Next slide, yes, and every type of education was impacted. Academically oriented education, vocational and practical oriented education was hugely impacted by this situation because the practices were just interrupted by the situation in hospitals, in factories, in offices, and so on and so on. And also don't forget, I didn't list all types of special education and special groups of students, but they were also highly impacted by this situation. Immigrant students who don't speak the language. So maybe they have the computer, but they can't keep with the others because they miss the language of education. Children with visual, hearing, or physical impairments, they just found themselves in each level of education in a very, very challenging situation. Children with attention disorder, that was and that is a huge challenge for teachers. You see how to teach them via digital equipments because in offline situation it is also very difficult to teach them. And I didn't list all the subjects. We have hundreds of subjects in our schools. Just I mentioned that naturally all the subjects were impacted by this situation because music, physical education, literature teaching, or physics. You can imagine in physics, you can, the students normally manipulate with different equipments, and they experience by themselves, traditionally they experienced physical phenomena and so on and so on. So this was a big, big challenge also for the subjects themselves in different ways. Okay, we can go further. Next slide. And also it was a different challenge for different teachers in different situations because, for example, I am in teacher education as well. It was a huge, rapid challenge for students in teacher education. You can imagine they never ever used to teach in classroom, and they found themselves in a situation that they had to be adapted to digital education without any experiences from different, I mean, offline education. Also teachers with different age, lengths of practice, IT literacy and types of settlements, communities, institutions, subjects, ages of students, they face with different challenges. So sorry for this long list, but just I wanted to tell you that we have one reason, but many, 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 many totally different impacts. And this is why we can't find one solution, but we have to find out many, many different and unique solutions which fit to the educational system, fits to the age, fits to the institution, fits to the teacher, fits to the families, fits to the subjects. Do you understand me? So therefore, we must find out a huge set of innovative solutions for the situation, and not to believe that we can find one big solution. Okay, we can go further on. And now shortly, I also show Hungary, but from somewhat different aspects compared to Marta. We can go to the next slide. Because naturally I will concentrate on Hungarian education, but as Marta also showed, Hungary is in the middle of Europe, and we can go to the next slide. It is a small country among those so many small countries in the middle of Europe. It has a culturally mixed population of 10 million. So compared to India, it is really, really a very small entity. Yes, you are smiling, but this is the reality of our country, very different from India, naturally. The population is mixed in its heredity background, but the language is Hungarian. Everybody speaks this Hungarian language. The GDP is quite high, but compared to the well-developed countries, it is rather a middle of low level. And what is interesting from our aspect that education is quite good in Hungary, but not really good. In OECD comparative studies among 60, 70 countries, Hungary is in the first third of countries, but not really in a good position, 21st among OECD statistics. And I can't go into details despite the fact that I like this topic. We have very many world famous scientists and artists who were educated in this small country and in the education of this small country, Hungary. So now we can go to the next slide. Just shortly, you won't be surprised. This is the system of education in Hungary. Nursery school, which is compulsory at least from age 5. It is generally compulsory from age 3, but from age 5, it is really seriously compulsory. Primary school is 4 years long, between 6 and 10 years of age. Lower secondary is again 4 years long, between 10 and 14 years of age. Higher secondary education is between 4 years long, 15 and 14 years of age. And then we have the tertiary education with the post-graduation and PhD. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And now I will show you what happened in this educational system, what happened in Hungary. I promised you that I will show you statistics about the students infected all over the globe by coronavirus, and that the schools were closed. In these statistics, which comes from McKinsey and Company, you can see that more than 1.5 billion, I would say that almost 2 billion students all over the world were highly impacted by this very bad and very sad situation. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And a small part of these almost 2 billion students were the Hungarian students. What happened in Hungary? In the middle of March, as Marta told you, we were locked down. I mean the country in general, and also education was locked down, but very quickly. So only 2-3 days before this date, Hungarian Ministry of Education decided to close education and to change education to digital distance education. That means that we had only 1 weekend. I mean, we teachers in each level of education, we had only 1 weekend to prepare for this new situation. It was really, really unexpected for everybody. And it was basically the system was unprepared. Nobody knew what to do. And there was no similar case, neither globally nor in Hungary. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And we can, okay. Now I go to the different levels, system, institutional, and individual levels, how systems, institutions, and individuals reacted. So The first information about Hungary is not a very nice and happy information. It starts well because we have a national digital strategy and we reached some achievements in national, go back please, national digital strategy, but national digital strategy was never implemented into the practice in Hungary. So my colleagues next to their, behind their tables, they were nicely preparing nice things for digital education, but it never ever was implemented into the system. So this was a big shock for most of the Hungarians because we knew that the state is working on a national digital strategy, but we were not sure that it was never ever used in the practice. So what tried the Ministry of Education do in this situation? They just raised rules and regulations. So what the teachers and what the schools as institutions are expected and are allowed to do in this situation, they just they just gave information for institutions and teachers and school principals about the situation. So they supported the institutions and individuals with the information. And also they carried out a number of central decisions. Hungarian education is highly centralized educational system. So what to do in this situation? For example, if we can have a national maturation examination offline, or we cannot have. I tell you, finally in May, Ministry of Education decided to allow offline national maturation examination for those students who graduate. So the situation was that our educational system is highly centralized, but teachers and schools got only some support from the central offices and not really supports what to do in the reality. Okay, so what was the institutions, I mean the schools and universities reaction? They just faced with an unusually complex, unknown situation to solve, and they got very few support from the central educational systems. So the role of the leaders of the institutions became really decisive. So if the principal, the dean, or the rector could carry out a good program for digital education in the institution, school, or university, then it was quite well solved by the institution. If the leader of the institution was hesitant, was not familiar with the educational digitalization, was not creative, and was not brave enough to look for new innovative solutions, then the institution couldn't move ahead in this situation effectively, because the teachers themselves, only by themselves, they couldn't solve the institutional level problems in this situation. So what the principals and school leaders, deans and rectors and other presidents had to look for in their institutions, creative solutions, but with responsibility, because everybody knew that naturally, partly because of the law and partly because of our human responsibilities, we are highly responsible what to do with the children, what to do with the students in this situation, independently of the fact that it was an absolutely unknown situation for everybody. So institutional and also individual responsibility became a highly important aspect of the situation. And what is my next final information on this slide? The institutions had to be flexible in this situation. For example, with students' attendance in the school, because we partly could check, but partly we couldn't check students' attendance. So we had to believe in some situations that they are there and they are following the program and so on and so on and so on. The next very important, I don't know how it was in India, sorry for this, I don't know the literature, and I also don't have enough information from everyday newspapers on India in this respect, but in Hungary it came out that in institutions we could find out one platform to use. Almost independently which platform this was, that helped a lot for the teachers, the students, and the institutions themselves, because the starting point was that A teacher used A platform, B teacher started to use B platform, C teacher started to use C platform, you see, and the students and the parents who tried to help their children, they became absolutely confused. How to use this platform, that platform, how to prepare and send back to the teacher a homework in this platform. Do you understand me? So that was a total confusion. In those institutions which were for different reasons already ready before the COVID situation with one platform, and all the staff used that one platform consequently, they could shift to the COVID situation much, much more easier. And this helped to the students, the teachers, and the parents a lot. Also, naturally, the previous experiences of the teachers with the information technology helped a lot. Who was not that familiar with this situation, they were suffered. And also what is important, that technical support. I mean, not just the equipment, but also those colleagues who are the technical colleagues in education, you see. We teachers, also we professors in higher education, you see, with all of our academic knowledge, we found ourselves in an almost paradise situation, you see, that we couldn't move ahead because we were not experts of digital systems and equipment, you see. So we had to rely on the technical colleagues very, very much. And this is something, I don't know how it is now again in India, sorry for this, that in Hungary, with teachers in schools and higher education, we asked the principals to have a technician for each class, because it is impossible that I start the class and I can't solve a digital problem because I'm not that familiar with IT world, you see, and then we lost education, and the students and the teachers do nothing, just try to solve the technical problem, which would be very easy and simple for a person who is in IT technology, you see. So actually in my university, the dean promised on my faculty that we get one technician for each class, and we can immediately ask the technician to do this or that if we can't solve the technical problem. And also, as I mentioned to you, the role of IT experts in schools and higher education was changed immediately because they became very important person. We can go to the next slide. And that is about teachers' reaction. It was extremely very diverse, from denial of the situation to continuous activity in education. Some teachers, they just gave up. They thought that they can't solve the situation. They are too aged. They don't know, they don't have IT literacy, they don't have equipment, they have special family situation, and they just send some message for the students via emails and send some tasks for the students, and otherwise they just gave up. However, some other teachers, they used to work day and night. Also during the night, they were preparing the classes, preparing the PPTs, and so on and so on and so on. Some of the teachers, they used very poor methodology because they were not very well trained in IT technology. And some teachers, they were excellent. Also, teachers tried to find out mixed communication channels with the students and the teachers in many schools. So let me say the teachers sent the classroom via video to the students. I mean, flipped classroom yesterday. Boston colleagues, they used to talk about flipped classroom possibilities and so on. However, when they had a problem, they called the parents or the students by telephone. It was not an easy situation to use sometimes this, sometimes that equipment. And also what is interesting, that the decisive point in teachers' activity was not the age, not their devotion for IT work, but rather personality. So those teachers who miss the human presence. They felt that they are alone at home in a vacuum, facing with an non-human equipment. They were just suffering. But those teachers who were rather task-oriented, not so much socially oriented teachers, they could shift quite easily. And many of them, they announced later that they just enjoy this situation very much. So it depends rather on the personality of the teacher. We can go to the next slide. What is again something very good, that the communication between the teachers became very, very, very vivid. They just called each other all the time. Hi, Peter. How do you solve this situation? Hi, Maria. How do you teach this musical piece? Do you understand me? So this kind of informal communication became very, very vivid and very, very supportive among the teachers. So student teachers and practicing teachers, they announced that they felt that we are really colleagues because we communicate with each other. Do you understand me? However, those small kind of informal communication, which happens in the corridor of a school or the cafe of a university, where teachers just share their some small ideas between two classes, they lost this informal communication from each other, and they missed this informal communication very, very much. Also, because of this very, very supportive behavior, many teachers felt that their professional identity became stronger because they felt that they belonged to a group of people who support each other mutually, and they valued this situation very much. So many of the practicing teachers, they told that they feel that they want to be teachers in the future more than they wanted to be teachers in the future previously. And what is a general situation all over the world, for most of the teachers, the situation was very demanding because it needed much, much more time, much, much more energy. Unfortunately, Hungarian Minister of Education, he announced that the teachers only enjoyed this situation. This is not true. They suffered a lot because their time and energy had to be double, triple, I don't know how many times more they needed. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Yes, so teachers, they had to innovate every part of their activities, which they used to do in the classroom. Communication, how to prepare the class, how to present the new knowledge, how to prepare this or that kind of student activity, how to solve the students' written and oral reports, how to measure the students' achievement, how to solve the whole, you see? So they had to be innovative in every step of their practice, which was also very demanding. In a sense, it was also very, very enjoyable because they felt that they can innovate new things, but it was really, really demanding for the teachers, and they couldn't avoid to innovate all steps of teaching practice because all steps just collapsed compared to the previous offline education. We can go to the next slide, and the next slide is already, if I am right, about students. It depends on very much on the student's age. Nursery school students, elementary school students, first, second, third grade, they couldn't work independently of an adult. It was impossible. So even the best methodology was used by the school and the teacher. A child who is 6 or 7 year old age, according to our experiences in Hungary, they couldn't solve this situation because still they weren't socialized for these activities. In education, I would say that students from 10 years of age, so lower secondary education age, they already could learn independently of the parents or adults. and the students in adolescent age, I mean 14 and 18, they enjoyed this learning at home. However, this generation, students between 14 and 18, they missed the peers' social presence the most, you see. What they decided to do to organize LAN networks, am I right? So they met each other on internet, and they used to learn together, 3, 4, 5 of them. What was a problem, what I indicate again on the bottom of the slide, that at the same time they excluded many of their peers from the original classroom. Do you understand me? So they were very happy, 3, 4, 5 of them together, and they excluded many of the others. That was a big social problem, an emotional problem of many students. We can go to the next slide. We can go, but still I missed something important information. According to Hungarian experiences, most of the students behaved in a responsible way in this situation. So they didn't cheat and they didn't want to miss the things because they understood that they need what is given by the school and the teacher, and they relied on the teachers and teachers' education very much. And I think teachers and students, in a sense, socially found themselves closer to each other than previously. Okay, we can go to the next slide, sorry. Parents' reaction, that is very important. Highly depended on the parents' social and educational background. Those who are highly educated and who has good jobs and earnings, they were extremely very active in this home education. You see, they just supported their children. They could tell them everything. They could show how to use internet, how to find information on internet. They themselves started to teach the children to physics, to history, to any parts of culture. However, those parents who lag behind in education and in general in social situation, they just found themselves in a situation they couldn't solve because they couldn't understand. They didn't understand the mathematical problems. They didn't understand the geography. They didn't understand this and that and so on and so on. So the scissors in Hungary became wider, very, very much according to the social economic background of the parent. Also, it was very much depended very much on the parents' workload. Because despite the fact that some of the parents had high education and good earnings, but they had to work very seriously. And if the child at home was a young school children who needed a personal education, because the people were, in a sense, trapped, closed into their home, therefore, the parents sometimes couldn't help the child, couldn't support the child because he or she was very much occupied by his or her own job from home. Also, it very much depended on the number of the children. There were very many families with 4, 5, 6 children, highly educated parents, but they didn't have that much device. They didn't have that much rooms. They didn't have that strong internet. So despite the fact that the family had a good position socio-economically, they suffered a lot because there were so many children in the family, and so on, and so on, and so on. Okay, we can go on. So some consequences, shortly we can go. Next slide. Under the pressure, many developments happened as well. What we told at the University Department of Education very frequently, that under this pressure, the teachers had to learn a lot. What is not only bad, but very good as well. You see that the teachers themselves, they found themselves again in this learning position that they had to learn very, very strictly. Also, we know that in Hungary, we got loads of small educational innovations. Now we don't have enough surface to share these innovations, but we have some surfaces to share these new things in education. Also, as we know from research, the parents and the teachers, they came together very, very much more communication between the parents and teachers, at least in Hungary, than we had before. Again, the teachers, the parents, the students mutually felt very much that they are very, very much dependent on each other. They are mutually dependent, depend on each other. I would say you that for many teachers, this was a new situation, that they felt that they depend on the parents and the students as well. So they didn't feel this kind of high position only in education. New collaboration, what is interesting, one of my research fields, but we can't go into details this time, that there were very many new forms of education between educational technology, private sector, and public sector. That was something very, very important. If you think about, if you think on the very impactful big companies like Google or Facebook or Microsoft, which I mentioned on this slide, educational institutions, teachers and students and parents, they had to rely on these companies very much. And these companies, they supported public education in many, many senses. And this was a new situation between the private and public sector, at least in Hungary. And also what was something new, that in general, the whole society became more active and more involved in education compared to the previous situation, because most of the parents, most of the people, we felt that we are responsible for education, otherwise we lose the future. What to do with these experiences and developments? Nobody knows the second phase of the virus, which is coming into Hungary, if we can open the schools or not. Everything depends basically on general health and economic situation. Many factors there are system, institution, and individual level. I don't repeat this. We already understand that the role of the classroom is changed. And at least in higher education, most of the teachers are for blended or hybrid education. What is a change compared to the past? Because in the past, we believed only in the individual, in the personal presence in the classroom. Now we feel that for freshmen, it is very important. For some groups of students, it is very important. In some subjects in higher education, it is very important. But let me say, we can start education with offline classes, 1, 2, 3 weeks, and then we can go online, and we can close the semester with offline education again. So we can imagine this hybrid types of education. And I think, I think we have to accept blended education. What is the difference between blended and hybrid education? In hybrid education, different channels of education are separate in time. In blended education, we have the channels at the same time parallel. How do I mean? I can imagine that from this semester, we will have classes where we have, let me say, a seminar with 20 students in the room and 10 students at home who just are with us on internet. Why? Because they are coughing, they have running nose, and nobody will allow them to come to the university. You see? And the same with the teacher. So I think we have to be adapted to blended learning and to understand how we can, blended teaching, how we can teach when some of the students are there physically in the classroom, but many others, they are outside of the classroom only on internet. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And this is my next slide. As you see, And thank you for your attention. And I also got some written questions, but I think now is it okay to invite Marta and we can give answers to the questions either we got on internet previously or what we get now?
We have students. Students can ask questions.
Yeah, we will go ahead and take some time for questions now, sir. And thank you. It was indeed a very informative session.
Thank you very much. Marta, come please closer.
I think by the time the students come up with their questions, let me say it was enamoring, very engrossing. And you believe me, both of you, that we identified with each and everything you said. It's so relevant. And as I think we identified that we have common problems right now, and more than ever before, the international community needs to learn from each other. So thank you so much for addressing, the teachers and but my only thing would be that you did some brilliant, research, but you never said anything for the heads of the institution, because we have our own challenges, than ever. Anyway, that was just, on the side just a side argument. But just because, everyone have their own challenges. So it's just coming to my mind that probably next time you can also do a research on how the principals and any head of the institution, what are their, challenges and how to bring everything together. So thank you so much. It was brilliant. Are we ready with the questions?
Yes, we have Arju who's going to ask question. Arju, please.
Namaste. Hi, Siya to everyone. I am Arzu Sharma, undertaking Bachelor's of Arts degree from Heritage and Autonomous Institution, KM. First of all, I would like to thank all the international delegates for such an informative session. So, my question is, public health actions such as social distancing can make people feel isolated and lonely and can increase stress and anxiety. However, these actions are necessary to reduce the spread of COVID-19. So how can we cope up with such mental challenges?
So I suppose this question is to me. Yes, it's very interesting because at the beginning of the lockdown, most of the discourse in the society, and I think everywhere in the world, was about increased stress, increased anxiety, loneliness, isolation, being claustrophobic, meaning that you are trapped in a particular physical environment. Some families have very small apartments, and they are big families, and they had to stay within that very small physical environment, many people together. That doesn't mean isolation, but doesn't give any privacy, and also can be very tension increasing after some time. So this discourse among psychologists, among social scientists, was about all these negative psychological effects that can be there for anybody who is in this situation, younger people, older people, middle-aged people. Now, in my talk, I presented what the students, the young people, answered to the question, what can I learn and what can I do? And in fact, we asked those questions exactly because we wanted to focus not only on the fears and on the negative aspects, also how these can be, let's say, controlled or coped with a personal attitude or a personal capacity to apply for this particular situation. And what was very reassuring that in fact we got all these different kinds of examples how anxiety and stress can be, let's say, controlled. For instance, really students said that I didn't say it that way in my talk, but they said that in order to control their anxiety, they started to focus on their studies and really study more and pay attention more to this. So they they distracted themselves from worries towards a much more fruitful activity, namely studying. And I didn't mention that as well, that we did the same questionnaire and open-ended questions generally to the Hungarian population, so not only university students, but adults of different ages. That's an almost 5,000 big data set. And very similar copings came to the surface, that activity, reframing, trying to see this situation as an opportunity to do things, to learn things, what normal life, let's put it that way, normal situations don't provide, because then you have many more things to concentrate on, or you have many more things to concentrate on in a different way. So of course, the examples show that many of the young people, they found for themselves certain kinds of means to cope with this situation. And I can imagine there were many who didn't find this. And therefore it was always emphasized by the university communication and also within the society that there are ways to get counseling, there are ways to get support, psychological support, and each psychological association, for instance, within Europe, provided this. I am Secretary General, International Secretary of the Hungarian Psychological Association, and the Hungarian Psychological Association is member of the European Federation of Psychological Associations, and there was a big meeting where all the heads or international secretaries of these European countries, heads of the Psychological Association, presented how their society, the psychologists, reacted to this COVID-19 crisis and what kind of support they offered to the society. And it was very nice to see that in each and single European Union country, there were a lot of different kinds of help offered, of course, basically online, each of them online or via the telephone, which means that those who don't have the access to internet, who are the kind of most disadvantaged segment of the society, of course, couldn't get enough help in this particular situation, but anybody who had the means could get, and it was very much emphasized that you should ask for that if you need so, or feel so.
And from educational aspect, the same question or issue. I give you a statistical data which is about Hungary and only Hungary, that teachers' schools could reach 80% of the students via digital systems, and almost 20% of the students, they didn't have any chance to channel to education with the others. That's, I think, quite a high number in the middle of Europe. So they got the tasks and other things in printed version. Also, I mentioned to you, how students, they organize their own working groups to see friends. They just invited on WhatsApp or I don't know which programs, and they used to learn with each other. However, as I told you, they excluded many other classmates from this group work. Therefore, the teacher's responsibility became stronger, that they had to organize loads of group works, and they had to change the students in the groups very, very frequently. Before we go further, I just realized that there was a very interesting question on the chat part of my screen from one of the students. It is not on the screen, so I tell you by heart what was the question. Somebody asked us how the students could maximize their achievements and how they can keep their motivation in this situation where they were not together in the classroom and not with the teachers? I think this is a very good question for Marta, because offline situations, I mean, when students are physically together, competition is very, very strong, and teachers in Hungary, they use competition for students' motivation, to motivate the students very, very much. So maybe Marta can tell something, how the students could keep this motivation without this personal competition among each other in this COVID situation.
Of course, what I can say is my experience in higher education and with university students and in my own classes or courses. But we had these courses online, and all the students participated. Of course, when it was an MA course, then the number of students is more limited, so it's more possible to be interactive and really listen to each other and listen to students' opinion. So in fact, we could more or less recreate the live interaction in a classroom. So students had the opportunity to listen to each other and pay attention to each other's idea. And in this sense, there was a kind of social dynamic that they wanted to show that they have nice questions, or they know what they are speaking about, or they are up to date with the learning material. So there was this kind of dynamic even on online situations. And as you see, students, at least many of them, and I didn't have only one student dropped from one of my courses. Most of them, I mean, the high majority of them, they finished their courses. So they rather wanted to be able to cope with, I mean, now in terms of intellectually or learning wise with this situation. And they really did a lot to be able to achieve well. So they didn't want to give up. Why was this so? Probably this is also a kind of social comparison, that if the other can do that, then I should be able to do that as well. So if my classmates, my fellow students say, well, I was able to do this online, or do this learning online, then they feel that it would be a kind of backward thing not to be able to do that. Also because all what you listen to and learn, even previous the situation, that IT skills are very important in our life. So nobody wants to feel that, well, I can't do that, or I was unable to do that, especially when they are young. So there was this kind of pulling each other up, I would say, which kept also their achievement relatively high.
And there is a question, what we got on email, internet email. How can moral and social values be inculcated through online learning? I think it is very, very important question, because we are digital world. We can teach a lot. We can develop the students in different ways with very many information, very many practical tasks, and so on and so on. Yesterday, the Boston colleagues also mentioned projects in digital distance education. A project is a very, very good method in this digital world, in this distance education. And in projects, you can include social responsibility aspects, moral aspects as well. Let me say, you have a group project work with the students. They have to design a bridge for a certain part of your country. However, you can put some other moral and value aspects of the task, what impact this bridge will have on different communities in this area, how people will find themselves in conflictual situations because of the new bridge, and how we could solve these conflictual situations, and so on and so on. I think the question has an implicit message that human values and social, general social values are very, very important in digital education. And when we imagine the future in education, and now I'm not talking about COVID, but general trends in education, artificial intelligence will be more and more important in education. I think artificial intelligence will bring very, very many good new possibilities. But as we know already from research, from theoretical literature and so on, what remains for human beings is social responsibility, human values, human emotions, and so on and so on. And so the soft things. Therefore, I think to keep these soft things on the table and to develop the students with these soft human values are very, very important. So the teachers have to pay attention to include these aspects to the task. In Hungary, we have classroom systems. I mean, there are homeroom teachers, so a teacher who leads a group of the students, and we have special classes once or 2 times a week when this homeroom teacher has the chance to talk about social issues, social values, responsibility in society, and so on. And as I know, the teachers, they used to do this via digital systems as well. So a group of the students, they were talking about emotional, social responsibility issues with the students. Not perfect solution, but still something.
So we have a question from student Simran. Yes, Simran, please.
Good evening to everyone. My name is Simran. I am pursuing Bachelor of Commerce in Honors. Thank you for this wonderful session. So my question is, because of excessive time spent on computer, mobiles, physical exercise is decreasing. We sit glued to gadgets and we are bound to have eyesight and other health issues. So how can we strike some balance?
Well, this is a very good question. And to tell you honestly, whoever I talk to, either on the teacher's side or the student side, it seems that sitting in front of the screen and doing these online tasks and online teaching is much more tiring. I mean, people get mentally more tired, and of course, sitting and sitting and sitting, as you mentioned, physically more tired and physically less fit. Let's put it that way. And especially in the lockdown, it was very, very difficult to keep this kind of fitness, because where can you move? I mean, within an apartment, it's kind of limited how you can move or how much you can walk or how much you can exercise. And you are also right about eyesight, for instance, that sitting in front of the screen all day, because that's the way you are connected to the world, work-wise, learning-wise, social friendships-wise. So everything connects you with a screen to the world. That is, you are right. It's a problem, but there was nothing to do, because if this is the way to connect, then you have to use the screen, and there can be a kind of awareness raising program to say that you have to move away from the screen regularly, you have to exercise regularly. And some people did that, some people that did that by their own initiative, some other people did that, or young people did that because their parents reminded them or their peers reminded them. But mostly I would say people were just sitting, and young people as well, sitting and sitting and sitting in front of the screen. And I think if this is just 1 month or 2 months, that's okay. But if it goes on for a long time, it can be a problem, and we should pay more attention to that.
In one of my slides, I mentioned to you students with special needs, and I started with immigrant students who don't speak the language of acquisition, the language of education very well, and that is a problem. However, in the next items, I mentioned students with special physical needs, visual impairment, hearing impairment, movement problems of the student, and so on. Unfortunately, I think the teachers have to design special tasks and special ways in communication for them. I tell you just one example. I run a number of in-service teacher trainings as well for practicing teachers. When we started the COVID distance education in Hungary, I just ran a course for, I don't know by heart, let me say 30, 40 teachers about some educational topics, an in-service teacher training, in-service teacher program. And I individually had meetings on the screen and discussions with the teachers, and we were talking individually about the task. So when I just invited one of the teachers to have this individual conversation with me, she announced me that, sorry for me, dear Dr. János, I have hearing impairments, and on offline situations, I can follow the conversation easily. But on internet, on screen, on microphones, I can't understand you. Sorry for this. So the only solution is that the teacher designs special communication with these students. However, this again doubles, triples the tasks of the teacher, you see. And they are also human beings who are not without constraints physically and intellectually. They also have only 24 hours a day. So this is really a problem. And still in the future, we have to find out good and better methods how to bring these students with ourselves who have these problems. And you are right, everyday problem for every student, because we are sitting all the time at the computer, also the same for the teachers. So physical education importance, the importance of physical education, because also eminent, and we know about some Hungarian, we know about some European schools which had excellent physical tasks for the students and also for the parents in some programs. So that is one of the possible solutions. Don't forget, this is not a situation which everybody wanted to have this situation. Nobody thinks that this is optimal. Unfortunately, this is really a big challenge for everybody from every aspect.
Thank you. So next question is by Ridhima. Ridhima, please.
Before we move on to the next question, I just have a suggestion. If ma'am principal approves, because we are getting many questions in the chat box. So if you allow, then after this conclave end, we can create a website. We can create a link on our website, college website. We will put all the questions, and in the meanwhile, we will get answers from the experts. So
Thank you,
all the
Gopi,
participants, it will take some time for us to get post you questions and get answers from you, and then with your name, designations, and email ID, post that questions and answers, so that everyone can get answer to what they are asking and they have been listening.
I think that's a very good solution. And after we take up, one or two more questions.
Yes.
Because, they have been sitting for a long time.
Yes,
and so we feel that we are, we have so many, I could see there are loads of questions.
Many relevant questions,
yes. This session has been so engrossing, so relevant, that everyone has a question. And so I think the solution is very good.
Yeah.
So maybe go with the next. So
my suggestion to all the participants: keep tuned to the Kanya Mahavidyalaya website. You simply Google. You have to type KMV Jalandhar, and you will be directed to our homepage.
So Gopi, we will be having a blog. I'll add here. We'll create a blog. Then people can post questions.
International Conclave. By the last day, we will try to have that link, and we will show the last day that link where your queries will be answered. So that because of the lack of time, we can.
So we have a question, last question from Ridhima. So Ridhima, please.
Thank you.
Hello everyone. My name is Ridhima Rajput, pursuing my graduation in Honours English from Kannama. First of all, thank you so much for such an amazing and informative session. So my question is, faced with new realities of working from home, temporary unemployment, homeschooling of children, lack of physical contact with friends and colleagues, fear, worry and stress are normal responses to such threats and at times when we are faced with uncertainty or the unknown. So how do you think we can win over this fear?
Well, all what you listed a lot of fears and a lot of difficulties. And what I can say that one thing is that maybe you remember one type of answer was we have to survive. So there is this kind of strong drive or strong intention in everybody, of course, at different strengths, but still that somehow we have to survive this. And this is a situation nobody wanted, nobody expected, nobody orchestrated that this should be like that, but we are in it. And we have to cope with it one way or another. I mean, we have to cope with it for ourselves. We have to cope with it for our children. We have to cope with it for our students, for our friends, for our family. I mean, for ourselves and for others. So in a way, and it's interesting because when I mentioned to you the Hungarian students' fears and learnings, Atima Sharma said that it's kind of universal, so you share many of these yourself. So what we know that we are all in, of course, the situations are very different, but there are many elements that are very similar in it. And the knowledge that everybody in the world sits somewhere and has to cope with sometimes unemployment, cope with that I have to work and I have to educate my children at the same time. I have to be constrained to my X size room or flat or apartment. I have to be, everybody is an unpredictable and uncertain situation. Everybody in the world, because nobody can say a for sure ending, a for sure kind of result or outcome of this pandemic. So we are all sitting in the same situation, and sometimes this helps people that they are not alone. We share this kind of uncertainty, and if I see that they cope with it, I feel I should be able to cope with it. That helps me to bring out my energy or bring out my coping elements to provide me with the possibility to get through this. Or I can see that others who are, let's say, in worse situation, they still endure. Then how can I afford that I don't endure when there are many people who are in even worse situation and they endure. So I would say that many times there are catastrophes in different countries and people relate to that from other countries and they feel sorry and they send support. But now we are all in a certain kind of very similar situation, and this means that we are together in it, and this gives also strength, I think, to cope with it.
Thank you. I think we can move to next session, because then we can keep the questions. We can send by email.
Gopi, before Dr. Gopi, just a small intervention.
Yeah.
So Dr. Marta and Dr. Janusz, this was brilliant. And I noted down so many, good things that you have researched. But one thing I would like to say on behalf of my institution, that under a project, just as the lockdown started, and Janusz so rightly said, that teachers and everybody else we just got a weekend to prepare. We also were never prepared for this situation, and it was so sudden. But soon we started a project to take care of the mental health and the motivational aspects of the students. And under that project, in fact, we have a short film on that, which we'll show on a later. Today we are not showing it, but later we'll show in one of these sessions that we started this project. And I would like to say that our students, they were so motivated and they responded so well. It started as a small project, but you believe me, with their strength, it grew bigger and bigger. And so they made, can you believe, 40,000 face masks. And with the help of the administration, we distributed to the most needy and, you know, people who had no access to that. Then we sent out food help to the people who had suddenly gone out of their jobs. And they were on the roads. In India, there are a huge number of migrant laborers who just, you know, who just came on the road. So we did that. And then we had psychological counseling and this physical activity. One student had asked, and Dr. Mata had very well answered to that. So we had physical activity hours for the students sitting at home.
That's very good.
So many of these things that you are suggesting, we already incorporated in their overall comprehensive, you know, education that we were providing to the students. And I also want to say kudos to our teachers who, you know, implemented all these projects, and the students who did so very well. But I'm sure, you know, what you have talked today, we have identified the problems more clearly. We have been able to pinpoint, and it has acted as a catalyst for, you know, identifying the issues further. And I'm sure that your intervention and this dialogue is going to make us more aware and richer in our understanding of the people and the situation. And we will try and find the solutions. And I'm sure that everyone who has heard will be very eager to find good solutions to these problems. So before the next session, I want to once again say a very big thank you to
Ma'am, we have Ma'am Maria from Boston University. We welcome you, ma'am.
Okay. So Maria, welcome back. We were looking for you, and you know Mata and I think Janusz.
I've been here all along. I have a spotty connection this morning, but I've been here and enjoying this. This is fabulous.
That's great.
We'll really use a lot of your insights and research findings to make our students' life better.
So do we have other resource persons if somebody wants an intervention? We had John, we had Dr. Edward. So Maria, if you want to say something more, I mean, we'll first give time to our resource persons if they have some intervention.
No, I think this was a fabulous session, and really, as I said, we can all learn from your research, and we can incorporate your findings into strategies to help our students cope and our instructors cope with the situation. It's, as you said, it's a global issue, so we all share the same concerns and the same really hopes to make this, to go through this, to survive it, as we said.
To survive.
Yes.
Ma'am, we have Dr. Addy from Boston University.
Thank you so very much.
Dr. Addy.
Thanks so much. This is a highlight of my day. Now, my day just started about 2 hours ago, but it's still the highlight of my day. Thank you for the wisdom that you shared. And I must share a quotation with you. And here's the quotation.
Yes.
Question, where does hope come from? Question, where does hope come from? And I'm not sure of the source, but the answer to the question is this. Hope comes whenever one person sincerely reaches out to another. And you all this morning have done just that for me and for so many. You've reached out to us, and therefore you've given us hope in a somewhat challenging time. So thanks very, very much. Good morning.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. That's really beautiful.
That was wonderful, actually.
Yes.
I think that gives us warm hearts and, you know, more hope of reaching out to everyone and more inspiration to do our best for each other. Thank you. Thank you, Addy. That is so touching and, you know, touching, and it's very inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you also.
We can move to Sonam now.
Sonam, over to Sonam, please.
Sure. Thank you so much, everyone. So moving forward, we would like to present a virtual tour of Kanya Mahavidyalaya, the autonomous and heritage institution, and try our best to make you all feel connected.
This is to make you feel nostalgic.
That's who we are. Amazing.
Thank you so much.
You certainly made us nostalgic.
Yes, very much so.
Very.
This is also a reminder that an invitation is always there to come back, just to show you that we are still here waiting for you when the situation is better.
We would love to, as you can imagine.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to organizing this event. I think this is an absolutely great idea and really works very well. And how wonderful that, in fact, we can do this online, you see.
Yes.
So.
You know, just as Dr. Downs just said, that hope is when one person reaches out to another. So you're reaching out to us and telling us all about Hungarian issues and, you know, all the things that are so common in these COVID times. This is the hope for us.
Yes.
And this is the positivity that we live with. And thank you so much for giving us that hope and the possible solutions after we can identify all these common problems. So we have to live with hope. And Dr. Downs,
that was great.
You are like an iconic professor of communication. Your one word can just, you know, like wrap up the whole activity. So thank you so much. And, you know, I'm going to go home with this hope and that both Janusz and Marta, and of course you, Eddie, you will all come back to KMV and during good times. And in saying that, this is a prayer for the whole humanity as well, that we are going to soon see the same life again, where we'll come back and meet each other physically. And of course, overcome all these, you know, fears and the uncertainties that we are living in. But till then, we have to be positive, we have to be hopeful. And we have to keep helping each other. That is the most important thing.
That's true.
So thank you so much for joining us, all the participants. Sonam, do you have to say something, or Madhumeet maybe?
Yes, ma'am, you have said everything, so nothing is left for us. But we hope that we will relish each and every moment of the upcoming sessions, and in the company, in the distance, though company in distance, but we will relish each moment of all these very, very invaluable sessions which we are going to organize over the days. And I expect the same from all the participants who have joined us over 2 days, and they'll continue to be a part of this very wonderful team which we have made here of exchanging collective, you know, pool of knowledge. And here I would like to thank Dr. Janusz, Gauri, Dr. Marta, Dr. Maria, Dr. Edward Downs, Dr. John, and we also had Sushila Bhagat ma'am, from a veteran from the management. She silently entered, but this is the virtual thing that we could not acknowledge her presence then. I do acknowledge it now. And at the end, the thanks wouldn't be complete without thanking the head of the KMV family. Dr. Gauri could not say anything. He knew, ma'am, that you faced so many challenges and you have done so well to convert those challenges into opportunities for each one of us.
Thank you.
And for always, you know, counseling us the best way you could. Thank you for everything, and thank you for making all this possible.
You know, last but not the least, the people with technical support who are always working so hard to make these things happen, and we cannot do anything without their help.
Yes, yes, they are demigods now. Yes,
you know,
thank
thank you so much. And also the person who has, you know, coordinated everything, who has worked so hard, Dr. Gopi Sharma, for having been, you know, there throughout as an anchor sheet for organizing all these wonderful international events. Thank you to rather well done. And, you know, I hope that in the coming days, there is more energy, there is more, you know, interest generated. You know, the yesterday's session was so overwhelming, and we've been still receiving comments for that. And I'm sure for today's session, we are going to continue to address all the you know, the compliments and the comments and the questions they're going to follow. So I'm saying all this as a, you know, actual thing that happened. But this is also an inspiration for you, Janusz and Mata, and Edward Downs and Maria and John Battolino to keep joining us every day.
Yes, ma'am.
Because there is so much action in store, and all the participants to continue to be there with us. So thank you, everyone. In America, have a very good day. In Europe, you have a very good afternoon, and in India, let's have a very good evening. Thank you so much, everyone.
So see you tomorrow at the same time and the places of your choice again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Nice.
Thank you so much.